Hello, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for this webinar from Cambridge, all about getting the whole learning picture in site assessments for your multi-academy trust. I'll just say a few words briefly before I hand over to Lucy, who's our presenter for this afternoon. So just a little bit about Cambridge Insight, which is formerly the Centre for Evaluation and Monitoring. So in April of this year, we introduced Cambridge Insight, which is our new name for our broad range of digital, adaptive, formative assessments from Cambridge. Our assessments are designed to give schools a clear understanding of each student, their cognitive and non-cognitive strengths, progress, well-being, and the unique attributes that our research shows contribute to long-term success. We've been working with schools for over 40 years in 125 countries. We're known for our evidence-based research, and using extensive data sets to support future outcomes and development. We analyze over 650,000 assessments each year to ensure that our data is globally trusted. Our range of baseline and attributes assessments helps schools and groups of schools to better understand, increase, and demonstrate the value that they can add to their students' lives, unlocking the potential of every learner. So I've got just a few pieces of housekeeping before I hand over to Lucy. The first is just to ensure good sound quality. All members of the audience are muted. If you'd like to ask questions, and we would love for you to ask questions, please post them in the questions section, which should be located on the right-hand side of your screen, and we will answer those at the end of the webinar. You'll receive a certificate of attendance, which will be sent to your email inbox 1 hour after the webinar finishes, and you'll receive a copy of the webinar recording, which will be sent to you over the next few days. So I'm delighted to introduce our presenter today, Lucy Baker. So Lucy is a former primary school teacher with 5 years of teaching experience. And during that time, Lucy held subject leadership positions and mentored trainee teachers. So I'll hand you over to Lucy to talk you through today's session.
Thanks so much, Megan, and thank you everyone for joining me today, especially this Tuesday afternoon. So I'm going to be talking you through today just about how our reporting can help. So in this webinar, what we're going to be looking at is we're going to be looking at how we can use our assessments to get that complete picture of your students across your trust and your group of schools. We're going to be looking at how you can identify areas really quickly and reliably to help improve academic performance. A big one for me as an ex-teacher is how we can save teachers time and workload, so as our results are all automatically generated. And then we're going to look at how we can identify strengths and weaknesses in a really clear way across your group and trust today. So as Megan mentioned, please do ask any questions in the chat and we'll come back to the end. And I will say there's some interactive bits in here where if you have your phone nearby or the internet, you can go on Slido and you'll see, but it'd be nice to join that as well. So just to let you know what we're going to be talking about today and the products we're covering. So all the products on my screen, we're going to be covering a range. So we're going to be looking at from Cambridge Primary Insight to Midgis, which is our secondary product, to Midgis Nielis, then to Alice as well, which are post-16. And then we will be looking at some of our wellbeing checks and CPSQ, which we'll go into more information about later. But yeah, so let's get started. I will turn my camera off just so the screen's a bit bigger for you as well. So let me just do that and then we'll get going. Oh, perfect. So when I mentioned about being interactive, this is the first bit I would love if you could join and do. So if you can scan the QR code at the top here, and then, or you can type it in on slido.com. This will help me understand what you're currently using across your schools, your school group at the moment. So for example, I did this webinar about a year ago now, and someone talked about how they used a range of products. For example, they use baseline assessments alongside their progress testing in termly as well. But yeah, so I'll put this here for a few minutes. And if you obviously haven't got your phones nearby, don't worry, but just to get ideas of what you use across your trust at the moment to help your school and your students. Yeah. And while people are doing that, I'll also talk at you as well. So I can actually talk to you about how, so there's one group we're currently working with, and they recently have signed up to use all of our products from ages reception, so that's when they're 4 years old, all the way through to their post-16. And they use a mix of our baseline assessments with other supporting assessments as well, which is really interesting. So it just depends how you use it, but just really important for me to understand how you use the assessments across your group. I see 2 people typing, so I'll give you about 2 more minutes. Oh, fab. So we've got you use techniques for the holistic and formative and submissive assessments alongside with CPI. Fab, really interesting. And this one is a real key one. Obviously, we here at Cambridge Primary Insight, we obviously we have our baseline assessment, but it's really good to do your baseline assessment along with your teacher observations as well. Really key and really helpful to get that whole picture, because the teachers will see key things that you might not see from that baseline assessment and from your formative assessments as well. It's a great insight there. Yeah. So what I'll do is thank you for people who commented. I will now start talking to you about some of our products, what we have, and how you can use it in a really helpful way for your group. So here at Cambridge Insight, previously Chem, we are looking to support multi-academy trusts and school groups, and that's hoping why you're here today. So part of Cambridge Insights assessment is making sure that you have really clear data to help support the insights into the data, and give that really clear, overarching, holistic approach to it to support students in a really clear way. And as you know, obviously you're here, you could have maybe some groups here have got 2 schools, some have got more than 2, some have got 50 schools. There's a whole range of group sizes and multi-academy trusts on this call today. But it's just about what's best for you. And here at Cambridge, we work really hard to ensure the best educational outcomes, and working with students to have that adaptive, clear assessment to support each one of your students. And the biggest part, especially as you'll know in your maths, is being able to turn that data that across all your schools into a really clear way to have actions and understand what to do going forward. And that's what Cambridge can help you with today here, and what I'm talking about as well. So on my last slide, I just wanted you to kind of think about what you're doing currently, because maybe you're doing some amazing things and it'd be great to think about that, but also what maybe would you like to look at in the future as well. So that's why I brought it up. So here at Cambridge, our assessments, as mentioned, we go from ages 3 to 19, our assessments, so, and that supports your reception ages to your primary, secondary and post 16. Our assessments are designed, especially as a few on the call do actually use us currently and use us across all their schools, are designed to give you a really clear baseline and attitudinal assessments to understand those students' needs, as well as targeting students in a really nice way for that holistic approach, and that can command our wellbeing check as well. But the biggest thing that, especially here at Cambridge, that we want to give you data that's really informative and helpful. And that's what I'm going to talk you through a bit about today, about understanding those strengths and weaknesses, how you can help support teachers' time. And that comes from the reporting and what you can get. And whether you use a different baseline assessment provider or other assessments, it's what data you're getting from that to help build your trust up and help you move forward. And that's what I'd really encourage you to look at to help make the smooth running of your group and schools, so teachers are data confident and you understand what the schools need to help improve and develop. So here at Cambridge, if you've used some of our assessments, you can get a range of reports, but I've just got an example here for you. But a lot of schools and school groups will use this anyway, but you can get a standardized result. So when you get your assessments, you tend to put it into your MIS systems, your register systems, or you use our portal as well. But your standardized results are really useful, and that's why I've shown this to you today, because this will be really key in helping you understand what's happening in your schools. And you could do this on a school level, like this, for example, where you got the class level, or you could look at it as a school level and you can have your standardized results per school. And I think it's really important you look at this data and use it. And having a summary of scores, for example, like ours, is really useful in that way, to look at that standardized result in a really clear way. So that's my first bit of advice for a school group, to have a look at your standardized results and see what the data is showing you. Because, for example, you might spot trends across your school that actually, let's take an example from here, that mental arithmetic, you have it's got a mix of highs and lows, but actually their general math skills across one of your schools is really high. And as a MAT, what could you do to look at and go, okay, this school is working really well in general maths. What are they doing that's going so well? Can we help the other schools who may have lower results and understand where they can go from there? So that's the really big thing to think about, is what is the data showing you? As I regularly say, data is our friend, and it's how we use it in a really clear way, rather than just putting it in a folder and going, yep, it's there, we've done it, and never look at it again. It's really important to look at that data. So how can we support your primary schools as part of your group? So what I would really recommend, what we offer as well here at Cambridge, is doing really clear assessments. So I get asked this a lot about what were the best years to assess students. And there is no wrong or right as what's best for your school. But if you wanted some assessment years, I would really recommend looking at your year ones, your year threes, and year fives. This is really useful because obviously they just come into year one, so they're going to start the national curriculum. Year three, that's just after the year two SATs, which would be really useful as well to help you understand their strengths and weaknesses. And then year five is just before their year six SATs, which would be really interesting to see as well. So they're the key years that we think are really useful to assess. But again, if you're doing it differently, that's really interesting to know. But that's what I would recommend as well. So whatever assessment tools you are using, it's really important that they give you clear tracking. And we obviously do all know this, but it's just about what that data is clear and concise. Because obviously you as a group will have that data and it's sharing it out with the schools. Schools need to be able to understand in a really clear way. And that's why having a tool like ours is quite beneficial in that way, or whatever tools you're using. But it's really useful to do that. I would really recommend having that consistent data, but also that consistent data, you can feed it back to governors. Part of the feedback when I talked to schools recently has been that when they try to explain the data to governors, it can be a bit hard to understand the trends, and they're looking for ways to improve that, and that's where they've been come to us to talk about it. So I'd really recommend having that really clear data that you can feed back to your school governors, and they understand what's happening in the school as well, to get that whole clear picture across your school, especially in primary. As a point for me as an ex-teacher is understanding your development areas, and that especially in the curriculum. That isn't just going, this went wrong, let's never do it again. It's going, what went right, what went wrong, and having that really clear with you. You can use data in a really clear way across primary schools to understand what went well, what didn't, and how you can move forward. So that would be my first bit of advice. Look at that curriculum, highlight the positives, highlight the negatives, and then go, what were you not sure on? What do you want to review? And I'd really recommend as a MAT or even as individual schools in your MAT, or bring one teacher from each one of your schools together, have that discussion. You can do it on Teams. I've seen school groups do it, or in person, but I really would encourage that. With your data, it's really important you look at the really key data points across your year groups. So understand what's happening in your year groups and really pinpoint those data points to understand the journey those students are taking. I'd really recommend that, especially in primary. And the biggest thing, which will save your teachers a lot of time, especially in primary when you're using our assessments well, use the data to create whole group interventions. So for example, you could look at one of our assessments and you could see that actually the standardized score is quite low for this area. What you could do is go into it and then go, I'm going to focus on reading for this term. And you can have a whole school intervention based around reading. So I recently spoke to one MAT, they've got about 5 schools in their MAT, and they've had a real issue around vocabulary in primary. So they've recently started targeting vocabulary by having a keywords board in every classroom, and at the start of every lesson, they go in and they have key vocabulary topics and they get children to speak it, write it, and make it into a fun game. But again, 5 minutes of each lesson, but it's across the whole school and across the whole MAT, and it's really helped build that vocabulary up because there's a trend spotted that is getting lower. So I really recommend, and also it saves you time. If one school is making a whole group intervention because of a low vocabulary, chat to your other school. It can help and support in that way. If you're a secondary school here, we have some mats who don't have any primaries in, that's fine. But if you're secondary, you can look at I recommend looking at your MIGIS and YELLIS data in a really clear way. So MIGIS covers your students from ages 11 to 14, and then YELLIS covers them from 14 to 16. So and then what you might know from MIGIS is it gives you really clear outcomes for their baseline data and gives you predictions. And this is where you can really help support them. And as a MAT, as a school, and as an individual school, I would really recommend having a look at this, because this data will help support you to understand what subjects are going to use going forward in the future, and what maybe needs support, what areas you could help support those teachers and develop them, and maybe if they need more funding for more budget in that way as well. So the reporting that I'd really recommend you look at is, as a school, on an individual school level in your group, I would go to identifying the student starting point, and I'd have a look at their standardized scores for this. You can also look at their cohorts as well, cohort reports, but just understand the starting points, their strengths and weaknesses, understand what student levels are in your cohorts. This is really important. And you can also do this on a MAT level as well, where you can compare and see how the school's cohorts are going as well. But it's really important to understand what students' needs are in that group. And when you've got it from there, then it'd be going, okay, so let's do a whole of school approach here, or what do we need to do to support geography or history? It's having a look at that in a really clear way. I would really recommend understanding what is going really well in your school. So that's where, if you use it, value-added data. I would really recommend looking at your value-added data and going, okay, let's review our school's value-added data. We can see school number 1 had this, school number 2 had this for each subject. See, part of that big reflection as you're having teaching is go, what went well, what didn't, and how can we improve? So look at your value added, understand the situation and see what do we need to put in place to support the school, to support the teacher, to move forward in a really effective way. And finally, especially for secondary, I would really recommend looking at the predictions. So if you've used our result reports before, or if you haven't before and you're just here to have a look, we give out prediction results where they will give you predicted GCSEs for IGCSEs or GCSEs, and it's really important for you to understand what's the likelihood of a student achieving that grade, as well as maybe a cohort. So you can split by cohort or student, and this will help you inform the decisions you make in your group to move forward, or part of your 3-year plan, for example. So I'd really recommend having a look at that data and understanding what is there and how to move forward. So just a few examples here. So when I've mentioned about the reporting you can get, you have our tiles here, and you go in, and I said the standardized scores are really useful from a MAT level to go in and see your standardized scores across your school, or from a school level to go in and see what is happening in there. I would really recommend also having a look at your historical band profiles. These are really interesting to see how your cohorts have changed year on year. Again, I say data is power. So how can you see how the cohorts have changed, what you need? Is this year's cohort very similar to a previous one? Have a look, have a see. You can also have you can have your scores comparison as well. And you can also do your school's performance comparison. So I'd recommend a lot of these to help support you from your baseline assessment scores to understand what's happening in your schools, what's happening in your classes for your students. From our predictive side, especially when you're looking at a MAT level to understand going forward, chance graphs are really invaluable in helping with this. You can have a look at your secondary chance graphs to see how geography might do across your map, for example. You can go into each school's one and see geography and chance of the grades, and this for all subjects as well. But I would really recommend it to understand what's happening and what that means for the students. And you can know that there's a chance graph for student and school chances here. So please have a look on there. I found they're really useful when I've talked to schools. That has helped schools understand what they need to do moving forward as well, which is nice. And finally, if you didn't know, if you've been using us before and that you've about value added and you didn't know you had it, if you use Midgis or Alice, you get value added data. And that's when you submit back your GCSEs or A-level results to us. And what we do is we then give you value added results. So we give you your school's value added to your scores, subject and performance. So this, again, as mentioned, it's really key for that self-reflection so that can feed into your plan of going forward for the next 3 years, what would you do? So I'd really recommend going back to your value add and understanding what subjects excelled, what maybe had the data was a bit lower than it should be, what's happened, and review it by situation. Just to understand what your school needs to support in a really effective way. So I just got a few examples here about our standardized scores. So for example here, you've come in and you're a multi-academy trust with 5 schools in, let's say, for example, and you've got your standardized scores for each school. It would be really useful to you to understand what the data is showing. You could turn this into tables, into pivots in that way, and you can see what's happening and what this means for you. And I'd really recommend standardized scores is a really key one that will help you move forward. So please do have a look and understand what your students' abilities are in the schools and any trends. So this is really key for maths, and I'd really recommend it. I would also recommend on a school level now, so that it's obviously useful for the MAT, but on a school level, especially you have your SEND and EAL students, so English second language or special education needs students, your individual student record is really useful to understand what your students' needs are and gives you a breakdown of their information and also gives you a visual. So if you have any new teachers as well in your trust, really useful to show a visual to help them understand what that data means for that student. So for example here, this student's skills are really high, which is great, but actually their vocabulary is quite low. So this could be actually an indicator that this student may need extra support in speech and language, but also it might be that actually they could have an additional need and they might struggle in exams going forward because the vocabulary when they come to their exam time might make it more challenging for them to answer. So it's really important you look at this, and you can see that all in that standardized report as well. But if you want to have that more in-depth zoom in look as a school, I'd really recommend it to help you in that way. I mentioned this one, our cohort profiles. This is really useful for school and MAT level. You can go in and see your year sevens, for example, have just joined your school. What does that mean for you? You can go in and you can filter by each subsection or assessment. And I'd really recommend having a look and seeing if there's trends or patterns and understanding what is happening in your cohorts. I find this is really useful to understand what the next steps and how you can move forward and have that positive change for students to get those best outcomes. Because you may notice a lot of students might be down this end, for example. What does that mean in your band C? They're at the lower end of your standardization. And if that's in a specific area, for example, in mathematics or non-verbal, that could mean they might not do as well in exams, or it might impact how they will do. So please do have a look, review. It's really useful to get that overarching view as a school and as a trust of what's happening in your year 7 cohorts or whatever cohorts you are assessing in. And it's really useful to help with those whole school provisions that you might go forward with in the future as well. So, as I said, if you have any questions, please do put them in the chat, and then Megan will come to them at the end. But so, and we might just have, you also have some mats who just are post 16, they haven't got any secondary or primary, or you have a whole mix, which is all okay as well, because I know from who's 10 today, we've got quite a range of multi-academy trusts in the school. But when you're looking at post 16 assessments, and if you're using ALICE, just so you know, ALICE covers 16 to 18 years, and it will help you understand the predictions for their A levels and also their baseline data. So ALICE is again our adaptive assessment, same as all of our assessments are adaptive. We're adapt to that student's level where there will be no, as we say, no glass ceiling. So if they're working older than their years, the questions will adapt higher. And the same way that if they may be working a bit below where they should be, they'll adapt lower to really get that clear baseline. And all of our assessments from Cambridge Primary Insight, MIGIS, YELLIS, and ALICE all cover that as well. So it's really important to look at that and understand that it will support all your students with their individual needs as well. But with ALICE, this will give you specific outcomes to A levels and the IB diploma. So when you look at this, I think it's really important for you to understand what data you want. When I've talked to a lot of post-16 schools, they do want a lot of focus on data, on standardization and what this means. So again, when using ALICE, I think it's really important you look at your value-added data. You'll hear me say value-added quite a lot, but I think it's really important to understand, especially as a senior, what this means going forward for your trust in your group and what's happened and what will have the most impact going forward. And by this, I mean, okay, so you've got your value-added back and you've seen a trend in one specific subject. That means what needs to change in the practices of teaching geography, history, English, science, what needs to change to make a big impact to help support those teachers and students to get the best outcomes. And value added is really great at doing that. So I'd really recommend you have a look at your value added data. I would also recommend that you look at your outliers of excellence. So maybe you have a look at dips in the performance of students and understand maybe if schools have suddenly had a dip in data in your trust, how can you support that school? What's happened? Has there been a lot of staff sickness or illness that lots of staff haven't been there? Or just on a school level, has it been that, again, students going for quite a hard time? What's happening? Look at this data and understand it. Data is your friend, as I keep saying. It's really important to help you understand how you can move forward. And when I talk to many schools, I think predictions are really useful. Predictions will help you understand what that student is likely to get. And here at Cambridge, we also offer predictions where you'll be able to see a chance graph of predictions. So it might be that the student's got the chance of getting a 4, but actually they've got a lower chance of getting a 5 or a higher chance of getting a 3. It's a really great way for you to understand the potential of the students. And again, you can get that by individual student or cohort. So on that MAT level, you could look at the cohorts and see the highest chance of those grades achieving and succeeding. So please have a look. Predictions will be really helpful to understand what you need to do moving forward. And then after you've done their assessments, you've taught them, go back to that value added, reflect upon it in a really clear way. So I'm just going to talk you through an example just about how we've worked with that, what is coming through your data, and see if it is very similar to what you're doing at the moment, but we'll go through in that way. So I currently work with a large MAT who actually have over 50 plus secondary schools in their group. And they have been using Cambridge Insight assessments now for over 7 years. And what they've been doing is they have a really clear system when it comes to it. They've got their data team who knows what they need to do, and the schools. And then the biggest thing I'll start off with this example is the schools are supported on uploading their students. They've given training to students and giving training and support on helping teachers understand the baseline assessment and what it means and how to use that data has really helped this group succeed and have it in a really positive way. So this large MAT, once all the schools done their assessment, they have a really good comparison of the school's data. So they get all the schools data together across all their 50 plus schools, and they see the trends and patterns. And from this collective data, they target year sevens in this group. They then go, okay, we've spotted a dip in, I know last year it was maths, but they spotted a dip in a certain area in maths. And they actually made group PD training for lots of the maths teachers in that school or the head of maths to help target that in the school. And it was the same with they spotted they had a lot of new ECT, so newly qualified teachers joining the school in the last few years, and they went, okay, so we need to support the data confidence. And they actually ran some PD sessions across the whole MAT, supporting new teachers with their data confidence. And again, that all came from looking at that whole school data in a really clear way. This also actually, they pointed this out to us recently, it really helped with their budget allocations. They identified that actually they realized that some subjects needed more support than others. So as a whole group, a large group, they worked out how they're allocating budget to support individual schools and specific subjects to boost that data up with more resourcing or maybe some more support staff to help with interventions to help target in that way. That leads really on nice to my creating targets. So this helped the MAT understand what they want to achieve as a group and what they want each school to achieve. So they sat there and looked at the data in a really clear way to understand, okay, so school number 1 needs to focus on vocabulary in this area and supporting their year 7. So by the time they get to year 11, their results are really high. And they went, for example, then another school, actually vocabulary was fine, but actually their maths was very low. And they looked at that and went, okay, we need to do this. And again, they did it with the same way with predictions. So they went and looked at their predictive results, and that helped dictate what GCSEs they were going to use across the school. And then because they kind of had a set GCSEs they were planning to run, it meant they helped with the planning across the school for all their teachers, because they created a hub so teachers could share their planning in a really clear way, which was really fabulous. They also have in their team, they have a select person who goes through and spots key trends in the data and spiky profiles, we call them, where they spot SEND or EL students. And then they see that maybe they have an extra need or support. And again, they worked with these schools to understand the students' needs, identified their SENCOs, and then also went forward and helped them create interventions and ideas and plans to support these students that be more personalised for them, but as a trust made a big bank of information to help support those teachers and SENCOs in the school. And finally, from this really large MAT, they did a really good data breakdown. So they use the data in a really positive way to go, what does this mean? What's the target here? And then if it went below what was expected, how can we improve it next year? They're very good in that reflection from the data, and they get that really great value added back to understand that. And that's how they use the data going forward in that really clear way. And that's what I would recommend. So this group also use our Cambridge Wellbeing Check, just to let you know. So they actually have that baseline assessment, and they bring in the Wellbeing Check for that holistic approach as well. So if you don't know about a Wellbeing Check, just to let you know, it's simple. It's for ages 7 to 19, and it's designed from research from Cambridge University. And it's designed to be able to give a questionnaire to students to help understand their mental well-being in schools. And it's designed for you to use in schools. So it looked at how the students are doing with their interpersonal well-being, life satisfaction, and their competency, for example, and said, okay, what do we need to do to help the students? And then this created a whole initiative again. People use the Wellbeing Check to go, we need to target, for example, life satisfaction for our year 9s, or, for example, competency and well-being for our year 11s. But actually, you might have year 7s who have a lot of negative emotions and being quite anxious and from joining a new school. But that's how the reporting can feed in really clearly. And it also helped as a MAT and on a school level to compare groups and classes in a really clear way and understand what is the well-being. And because you can do it termly, half-termly, it's your choice. You can do as many assessments as you want or have a select support group in your schools. It's really great to understand what you need. And then again, as part of a MAT and as an individual school, those supporting lesson plans help give guidance on how to move forward with wellbeing. So it's a really great way to get that whole student's wellbeing in your school supported in a really concise way. So this was, I recently worked with this group and they were really lovely, but again, you might find this a really efficient way for you guys to move forward about your mat. But this was used by a local authority, and what they did in the UK, and they used it as part of a transition. So they got their year sixes to do a wellbeing check near the end of year 6, and then they had that data and they gave it to the secondary school, so the year 7 teachers the students went up to, and then they assessed them again, and they used it as a way to understand the transition and how the students' well-being changed over that year. And it gave some really clear information about what this meant. So those year 6 students who went up to year 7, it broke down how they were feeling in a really clear way and helped them support them on that journey of changing schools. And this local authority, is around about 15 schools in this group, felt that it really helped support students in a really effective manner. And it helped them spot those students who actually needed that bit more support with that transition. They were struggling a bit, because as we know, students will struggle. But on that whole group level, it worked really efficiently. And then again, we provided lesson plans, as part of Wellbeing Check does, to support those teachers in giving that wellbeing support and helping with those students feel calmer and feeling more happy in year 7 to help them with their academic studies. Because as we know, if a student is feeling down or has poor wellbeing, that impacts in their academic studies. And then because this was done the whole group level, it allowed for that consistent monitoring, so all the data was clear and concise. And that's how it went really effectively across this group in a really nice way. So just to let you know, we also have something called CPSQ. So we have recently a small mat who started using us across their schools. But CPSQ is our Cambridge Personal Stylised Questionnaire. And it's a behavioural stylist questionnaire, which will give you insights about that student and what it means to their personal styles, and will contribute to their education progress and their work effectiveness and give them more guidance going forward. So this has been, like I said, being used recently by a group, and it helps understand what students need going forward. So it's very straightforward. It's a 14 plus, so it's tends to use secondary to post 16, and it goes to give you questions around attitudes and behaviours on specific subjects. It will give the student a competency score and breaks down their strengths and their weaknesses in a way for them to self-reflect and understand how what this means for their learning styles and other areas. It's really interesting. And like all our assessments, we've taken online, tablets, PCs in that way as well. So that is CPSQ, and that's only recent. I can't do too much about this, but I thought I'd mention our slides today. But one mat brought that in, and they found that really useful to help support their students going from secondary to post 16, and help support them with their choices, what they want to go for A levels as well. So here at Cambridge, we really want to measure students' ability levels and help MATs and trusts and groups like you to develop. And especially in the UK, we need to look at what the Department of Education wants for your outcomes as a MAT. So the Department of Education, actually, they've stated they want to monitor and measure the progress that all children are making, taking into account the difference in what is good progress and what it looks like. So here at Cambridge, we've made sure that our reports are able to measure that ability and progress over time in a really clear way, and offer that individual measures to support those students across your MATs. And again, another example here, they want trust leaders to be able to assess the data to inform the decisions they make, so they can help support schools and teachers to be able to act on feedback. And I'm sure a lot of your MATs are doing that really well, especially being in a UK school. But what else can you do? And that's where, if you're using Cambridge, I'd really recommend you look at what this means for your trust, and maybe having that whole school intervention approach, and then maybe using that to help save time for teachers, sharing those interventions and what those improvements mean. Again, looking at the data, that self-reflection, see how it's changed as well. Would really recommend that. And finally, making use of metrics to ensure that priority areas of improvement are identified, whilst remaining aware of the implications of workload and wellbeing. As we know, and I'm sure there's a lot of teachers in this call, it's very important that teachers don't have too much workload and aren't overwhelmed. So part of Cambridge is why we're only online based. Our assessments are only online because there's no marking for the teacher. It's done by our systems and it's quick and easy to administer. And that's part of the reason we do that as well. So saves teacher time, and we have that adaptive nature for the students to help with their wellbeing as well. So I would like to thank you for listening to me today. And I'm just going to talk you through just about how data is not just for the teacher. It's not just for that data team in the MAT. It can be for everyone. So my biggest point today will be, if you're a MAT director, make sure you're having a look. What does that data mean for you across your trust? Chat to teachers, chat to head of subjects, review. If you're the academy leader, what's the data in your school? Have you looked at those cohort profiles to understand? Have you looked at your predictions for subjects? If you're a teacher here today, again, you'll be looking at your level, but your classes specifically, if you're primary, secondary, or post-16. Have a look at those individual profiles. Look at the standardized score for your class. See if you spot any trends. What can you do to move forward? Chat to other teachers, see if they have similar trends. I'd really recommend it. If you're part of the procurement office, you might have access to this data. What does this mean for you? Do you need to look at more resource? Work with other people in this across your school. So if you need more resource for a specific subject, have a look at that, discuss, build those conversations up. And finally, our data managers, you'll be looking at all the data across the MAT and the group. I'd really recommend that you also chat to teachers and see if their teacher observations are feeding into this as well. And just, again, open conversations. Data can seem like quite a scary word, but actually data can be really empowering, and it's what you do with that data that helps support you moving forward. So please do have a look. So I do understand that it is obviously after school today, so some people might have had to log off and you'll be sent the rest of the recording. But if you do have time, I've got a little poll just to see what data is most valuable to you. So if you think the standardized data you find the most useful, you could tick that poll. If you think predictive is the most efficient, please tick there. And if not, this poll will be up later and then it'll be on the recording when it goes up later. But just be curious to see. And we have one person voting. Okay. So we have a few more coming in now. So from my end, I can see I've got about interesting. Okay, so actually progress is the most popular at the moment, which is very interesting. So you want to track the progress they've made across their years. That's insightful to see. I'm glad that all of them have got votes, but at the moment it's predictive and progress. So that's very interesting to see. Okay, so have a think about what you're doing in your school. Again, there's no wrong or right, but it's what you find most valuable for you and predictive. Okay, so I think I'll end it there as you've listened to me for the last half an hour. But thank you for that. So every time I was predictive is what is most popular at the moment. So go and have a look at your chance graphs. Have a look at your GCSEs and A-level predictions. What does this mean? They're all there for you on your portal. Go and have a look. It will really support you. So if you have any questions, Megan you can put them in the chat now to Megan. But also, if you want to drop me an email later, if you don't want to ask in the chat, that's fine. I'll get back to you with any questions you have. Or if you just want any more information about any resources of where I can send you for interventions or support, please do get in touch. Yeah, thank you for your time for listening today.
Thank you so much, Lucy. There's a question that's come through about balancing the standardized scores with offering sort of more flexible approach to understanding student ability. Do you have any thoughts on kind of how standardized scores are maybe just a sort of part of understanding student ability?
Yep, so I'm going to assume they may be looking at secondary, because if you're looking at the primary, primary you can standardize your results. So in primary you can have your standardized or age equivalent with us. So I'd recommend having a look at both just to understand what that means for your students and understand those gaps. But if you're looking at secondary, for example, I would say, I said, secondary will give you that really good baseline. But as you found, for example, students might do their GCSEs and our baseline data with the standardization will say they're likely to get this. But actually that student might suffer from maybe exam anxiety and other areas. And they might not do as well in exams, which might dictate that. So what I'd really recommend is you use your standardized data and chat to your teachers. See if the teachers agree with that data, say if they think it's accurate, or if that student actually maybe does really struggle in certain areas, and then that for well-being wise, because that might lead a big impact. So again, it's using that data with those teachers in a really good way and having those chats. On a MAT level, I'd recommend actually bringing together maybe your heads of maths across your schools and having those discussions about standardizations and what that means to give you those better informed judgments. And that's what I would recommend. But again, chat to your teachers as well, because they also know those students and know that data from the results and what that means going forward.
Yeah, great. Thank you, Lucy. I don't think there are any other questions that have come through, but as Lucy mentioned, if you think of anything or if you have any questions that you didn't get a chance to ask, or you want to contact Lucy directly, then her email address is on the screen. Just a massive thank you to Lucy for presenting today, and for all of you for attending. I hope you found it useful. Just a reminder that we'll send around the recording within the next few days. But if you've got any questions, feel free to contact Lucy, or you can contact us at our general email address, which is insight@cambridge.org. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of your day. Bye, everyone.
Thank you. Bye.